At first it seemed like a miracle, a loyal German shepherd giving birth to not one, not five, but 15 tiny puppies. The vet, the owner, even the nurses were left speechless. But then something strange happened. As the vet leaned closer, examining the newborns, his hands trembled, his face went pale, and the room filled with silence. Something was wrong. The puppies weren't ordinary. In fact, they weren't even dogs at all. The truth behind their birth was so shocking, so unbelievable, it left everyone speechless. Stay tuned, because this revelation will leave you stunned. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The night had been calm, the kind of quiet evening when nothing extraordinary seemed possible. Sarah, the proud owner of Bella, her loyal German shepherd, noticed the first signs that labor was beginning. She rushed to prepare a warm corner in the living room, laying down soft blankets while her husband gathered clean towels. Bella paced nervously, her sides heaving, her eyes filled with both exhaustion and determination. As the clock ticked past midnight, the first puppy arrived. Tiny, fragile, and wet with life's very first breath, it let out a faint squeak. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, her heart swelling with joy. She gently guided the puppy to Bella's side, whispering words of encouragement to her beloved dog. Bella licked her newborn tenderly, her maternal instincts kicking in immediately. But then another arrived. And another. And another. By the time the fifth puppy was born, Sarah and her husband exchanged astonished glances. German shepherds typically have litters of 6 to 9. 5 already seemed impressive, but Bella showed no sign of stopping. Sweat formed on Sarah's brow as she counted each tiny life. 10, 12. The room filled with soft whimpers and squeals, the sound of 15 newborns crying out for their first meal. Bella, though exhausted, pressed on with a strength Sarah had never witnessed before. Neighbors who had heard the commotion stopped by, peeking into the living room with wide eyes. Gasps and murmurs filled the air. 15? That's impossible, someone whispered. Phones were pulled out, pictures snapped, the miracle moment spreading beyond the 4 walls of the small home. At last, Bella lay down heavily, her sides rising and falling with labored breaths. Around her squirmed 15 tiny, wriggling puppies, each one pressing close, seeking warmth and nourishment. Sarah couldn't believe what she was seeing. It was more than just a large litter. It was a record-breaking miracle. She placed a trembling hand on Bella's head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You did it, girl," she whispered. "You really did it." But as the puppies nuzzled closer, no one in that room could imagine what secrets those little lives carried, or the shock that awaited them at the vet's clinic. Morning sunlight spilled through the curtains as Sarah and her husband, Daniel, gazed in awe at the sight before them. The floor was alive with tiny movements, 15 little bodies nestled against their mother, squeaking, stretching, and wriggling in search of warmth. Sarah could barely hold back her tears. "They're perfect," she whispered, brushing her hand gently over the closest pup. Daniel let out a soft laugh, though his eyes betrayed disbelief. 15, Sarah, do you realize what this means? Bella didn't just have a big litter, she gave us a miracle. His voice shook with pride, the words echoing through the small living room like a blessing. The family wasted no time sharing the news. Within hours, neighbors and close friends began arriving, curious to see the spectacle with their own eyes. Soon the house buzzed with chatter and amazement. Children squealed with delight, pointing at the tiny puppies tumbling over one another, their little paws pressing against Bella's side. Phones flashed as pictures and videos were taken. Social media posts began circulating, and whispers of the miracle dog spread faster than anyone could keep up with. Despite her exhaustion, Bella lifted her head proudly, as if she understood the importance of her achievement. Her dark eyes softened when Sarah knelt down to stroke her fur, whispering soothing words of love and admiration. Around her, the puppies squeaked and squirmed, their tiny tails twitching as they sought comfort. Daniel shook his head slowly, still stunned. "I've read about big litters before, but nothing like this. 15. It doesn't even sound real." His voice carried a mixture of wonder and caution, as though some part of him already sensed there might be more to this than met the eye. But in that moment, surrounded by joy and laughter, no one wanted to think about anything except the miracle they had just witnessed. For Sarah, it was simple. Bella had blessed their family beyond measure. Little did they know, however, that what seemed like a miracle would soon raise questions no one could ignore. 2 days later, Sarah carefully loaded Bella and her 15 newborns into the car. The air was filled with excitement and nervous energy as Daniel drove them to Dr. Collins, their trusted veterinarian. The clinic staff had already heard the whispers, the German shepherd who gave birth to 15. When Sarah entered with a box of squirming puppies, the waiting room fell silent. Patients craned their necks, murmurs rising in disbelief. Dr. Collins, a kind-faced man in his 50s with decades of experience, stepped out of his office. His eyes widened instantly. 15? He asked, as though needing to hear it out loud to believe it. Sarah nodded proudly. All healthy so far, but we wanted you to check them. The vet wasted no time. He gently lifted each pup, examining their tiny paws, ears, and bellies. At first, everything appeared normal. Heartbeat steady, eyes still sealed shut, soft cries echoing through the room. Yet, as he moved from one to another, his brows slowly began to furrow. These are unusual, he murmured almost to himself. His hands paused over a pup with a peculiar pattern along its back, something not typically seen in German shepherd markings. Another pup let out a cry, but instead of the soft whimper of a newborn dog, the sound carried a sharp, piercing tone that made Dr. Collins glance up, startled. Sarah exchanged a nervous look with Daniel. "Is something wrong?" she asked, her voice unsteady. Dr. Collins forced a reassuring smile, though doubt flickered in his eyes. "They're healthy," he said carefully, "but there are some traits I'd like to observe more closely." He finished the examination, his fingers lingering on one particularly restless pup that squirmed with surprising strength for its age. The doctor's chest tightened. He'd delivered hundreds of litters in his career, but something about these newborns stirred a strange unease. As Sarah and Daniel leaned over the examination table, cooing at the puppies, Dr. Collins stepped back, his mind racing. To everyone else, they were simply adorable miracles. To him, however, they were a puzzle, and one he intended to solve. The joy of the miraculous birth was beginning to blur, replaced by the first shadow of suspicion. That evening, Sarah sat cross-legged on the floor, watching Bella nurse her 15 pups. The room was filled with the soft chorus of squeaks and whimpers, yet something about the scene gnawed at her. She noticed the way a few of the puppies wriggled restlessly, their tiny paws striking out with an unusual force. One pup, barely a few days old, tried to crawl away from the litter, its movements strangely quick for its fragile size. Daniel leaned closer, his brow furrowed. "Did you see that? He's stronger than he should be." Sarah nodded slowly, her stomach tightening. "And look at this one," she whispered, pointing to a pup whose markings seemed to shimmer oddly under the lamplight. Its fur had a sheen that didn't look quite right, almost as if it belonged to another species entirely. The neighbors who had gathered earlier returned, eager to see the miracle puppies again. But this time their admiration carried an edge of unease. "They're different," one woman murmured, tilting her head. "Almost too different." As if on cue, one of the puppies let out a sharp, high-pitched sound shriller than a normal whimper. The noise sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. Bella immediately nuzzled the pup protectively, her eyes flashing as though warning anyone who dared to question her babies. Daniel forced a smile, trying to mask his unease. "They're just unique," he said, though the words sounded hollow even to his own ears. Sarah couldn't shake the memory of Dr. Collins's furrowed brow, the hesitation in his voice. These puppies were alive, strong, and undeniably extraordinary, but in ways no one could yet explain. The laughter and celebration that had filled the house only a day before now gave way to whispers and uncertainty. The miracle that once brought joy was slowly turning into a mystery. By the third night, Sarah could barely sleep. She sat on the edge of the couch, staring at the box of puppies nestled beside Bella. Their tiny bodies twitched and squeaked in the dim light. But what unsettled her most was how different they seemed from one another. Some were larger than expected, their limbs oddly defined for newborns. Others made noises that didn't sound like barks at all, sounds that raised goosebumps on her arms. Daniel walked in quietly, carrying 2 mugs of tea. He set one beside her and sat down with a heavy sigh. "You haven't taken your eyes off them all night." "How can I?" Sarah whispered. Something's not right. Puppies aren't supposed to move like that. She gestured toward a pup that had somehow climbed halfway out of the box, using strength far beyond its age. Bella immediately nudged it back, her protective instincts on full display. Daniel rubbed his temples. I know, but Dr. Collins said they were healthy. Maybe we're just overthinking it. But Sarah shook her head, tears glistening in her eyes. Healthy doesn't mean normal. Did you hear that sound earlier? That wasn't a puppy's cry. I've raised dogs my whole life, Daniel. I know what I heard. Her words hung in the air, heavy with dread. Daniel reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. We'll figure it out. Maybe they just take after Bella differently. Maybe it's nothing. Yet even as he spoke, his voice cracked with uncertainty. The whispers from neighbors hadn't helped either. Earlier that day, someone had muttered that the puppies looked unnatural. Another suggested calling in more experts. Sarah had defended Bella fiercely, but the doubts had already burrowed deep inside her. She looked over at Bella, who lay stretched out, her dark eyes glowing with unwavering loyalty. The mother dog seemed unbothered by the strangeness of her pups, guarding them with the ferocity of a lioness. Sarah's heart ached. She wanted to believe it was all just paranoia, but deep down a chilling thought took root. What if these puppies weren't what they seemed? The following morning, Sarah and Daniel returned to Dr. Collins's clinic, their anxiety written clearly across their faces. Bella walked calmly beside them, her puppies tucked safely inside a lined basket. The waiting room hushed once more, whispers rippling through the crowd. Everyone had heard about the miracle litter, and curiosity burned in every pair of eyes. Dr. Collins ushered them into the examination room, his expression serious. Let's take another look, he said gently. He began lifting each pup again, more carefully this time, his gloved hands trembling ever so slightly. The first few appeared healthy, tiny hearts beating steadily, coats thickening with strength. But then his brow creased. One puppy's claws seemed sharper, more pronounced, as though designed for something other than gentle play. Another pup's jaw muscles twitched unusually, giving the impression of teeth pushing earlier than normal. What is it? Sarah asked nervously, clutching Daniel's arm. Dr. Collins hesitated. He had seen thousands of litters in his career, but nothing like this. They're strong, too strong, he muttered. He placed one restless pup back into the basket, only for it to squirm with surprising force, nearly leaping from his grip. Their development is accelerated. Daniel frowned. Accelerated? Is that dangerous? The vet didn't answer immediately. He leaned in closer, examining a pup's coat that shimmered oddly under the fluorescent light. His hand froze, his eyes narrowing. This isn't a normal fur pattern, he whispered almost to himself. Sarah's stomach dropped. What do you mean? Dr. Collins removed his glasses, rubbing his forehead. I don't know yet, but I need to run some tests. These puppies are different. And until I understand why, we need to be cautious. Fear flickered across Sarah's face. The joy she had once felt now twisted into dread. Different how? Are they sick? No, the vet said firmly, though uncertainty lingered in his tone. Not sick, just not what I expected. The room fell into uneasy silence. The puppies whimpered softly, their strange cries echoing like a warning. For the first time, Sarah realized the miracle that had filled her home with joy might also carry a terrifying secret. Dr. Collins paced the small examination room, his face pale and thoughtful. He had tried to remain calm in front of Sarah and Daniel, but the truth was gnawing at him. Something about these puppies defied everything he had learned in veterinary medicine. Their strength, their cries, their markings, it all pointed to a mystery he couldn't solve alone. Finally, he turned to the couple. I want to bring in a colleague of mine, he said carefully. She's a specialist in genetic anomalies. If anyone can make sense of this, it's her. Sarah's eyes widened, fear mixing with hope. Do you really think it's that serious? Collins hesitated, then nodded. It's unusual enough that I can't ignore it. We need answers before these puppies grow any further. The couple exchanged an uneasy glance, but agreed. Within hours, Dr. Collins was on the phone, describing the situation in hushed tones. On the other end, Dr. Rivera, a renowned veterinary researcher, listened in stunned silence before promising to come immediately. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the clinic lights glowed brightly against the gathering dark. Dr. Rivera arrived. her expression sharp and inquisitive. She peered into the basket of pups, her brows knitting together. One by one, she examined them, taking careful notes and murmuring under her breath. "These traits," she whispered, "are not just rare, they're almost impossible." She looked up at Collins, her eyes filled with unease. "We're not dealing with an ordinary litter here." Sarah clutched Daniel's hand, her pulse quickening. "What does that mean?" "There are puppies. Bella's puppies." Dr. Rivera gave her a gentle look. "Yes, they are. But there's more to them than meets the eye. And we need to find out what." For the first time, Sarah realized that their miracle wasn't just attracting attention. It was attracting scrutiny. And what came next might change everything they believed about Bella's extraordinary litter. Dr. Rivera adjusted her glasses, her hand steady as she gently cradled one of the puppies. Its small body wriggled with surprising strength, tiny claws scraping against her palm. She glanced at Dr. Collins, her voice low but firm. "This isn't normal development. These puppies are showing traits weeks ahead of schedule." Collins nodded grimly. "That's what I was afraid of." Sarah leaned forward, her heart pounding. "But they're healthy, right? They're not sick?" Her voice trembled, desperate for reassurance. "They're not sick," Rivera said carefully. "But their biology isn't following the rules we know." She held up another pup, pointing to its jawline. "Teeth buds already forming. That shouldn't be possible at this age." Daniel stiffened. "Are you saying—" "They're not dogs?" Rivera hesitated, her silence heavier than words. "I'm saying they may not be just dogs." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. The room seemed to close in around her. "What does that mean?" Collins stepped closer, lowering his voice. "We'll need to run blood tests, genetic screenings. There are traits here I can't identify, features that don't match canine norms." As if on cue, one of the puppies let out a piercing cry, unlike anything they had heard before. It wasn't a bark nor a whimper, it was sharper, more primal. The sound sent chills racing down Sarah's spine. Bella growled softly, pulling her litter closer as if shielding them from the scrutiny. Rivera scribbled notes furiously. "These markings, the muscle tone, even their cries. There's something unique in their DNA." The air in the clinic thickened with tension. Sarah clung to Daniel's arm, torn between fear and maternal attachment. "They're Bella's babies," she whispered fiercely. "Whatever they are, they're ours." Rivera gave her a sympathetic look but didn't argue. Instead, she turned to Collins, her tone urgent. "We need those test results immediately. Until then, keep them safe and away from too much outside attention. If word spreads too far, this could spiral out of control." The revelation hung heavy in the room. These weren't ordinary puppies. What they truly were was a mystery that was only beginning to unravel. By the end of the week, the quiet neighborhood no longer felt the same. Word had spread like wildfire. The dog who gave birth to 15 extraordinary puppies. At first, it was neighbors stopping by, eager to catch a glimpse. But soon strangers began arriving, their phones ready, their voices filled with curiosity and speculation. Sarah drew the curtains tightly, trying to shield Bella and the litter from prying eyes. Every knock on the door made her heart jump. She wanted to protect them, but how could she when the entire town seemed to know their secret? One morning, Daniel stepped outside to fetch the newspaper and found 2 reporters waiting at the end of the driveway. "Is it true?" one shouted. "Can we see the puppies?" Cameras flashed before he could respond, their eager questions turning the quiet street into chaos. Inside, Sarah cradled one of the pups nervously. Its unusual markings shimmered faintly in the morning light. Bella growled from her corner, her protective instincts rising stronger each day. The noise outside only heightened her tension, her ears flicking at every sound. Social media had exploded with speculation. Videos of the wriggling newborns, posted by neighbors who had visited earlier, were now circulating online. Some called them miracle pups, while others whispered about mutations, experiments, even conspiracies. The more the world speculated, the heavier Sarah's fear grew. Dr. Collins phoned late that night, his voice stern. "Keep them safe. Don't let too many people near them. Curiosity can quickly turn dangerous." Sarah's chest tightened as she watched the puppies squirm and squeal. What began as a miracle was fast becoming a public spectacle, and the more people learned, the less control she had over the situation. The family's once quiet home was no longer a sanctuary. It had become the center of a growing mystery, one the outside world was desperate to uncover. The clinic was unusually quiet that afternoon, the silence broken only by the faint hum of machines in the lab. Sarah and Daniel sat side by side, their hands clasped tightly while Bella rested on the floor, her 15 pups nestled protectively against her. Both parents felt the weight of every ticking second. Dr. Collins entered first, his face unreadable. Behind him, Dr. Rivera carried a folder thick with test results. She set it gently on the table, then looked at the couple with steady eyes. "We have the results," she began, her tone calm but heavy. "And what we found is—" Extraordinary, Sarah's throat tightened. "They're healthy?" she asked quickly, almost pleading. "They are," Rivera confirmed, "but not in the way you expect. These puppies carry genetic markers unlike anything we've seen in domestic dogs. Their growth, their strength, even their cries, these are not random. They're deliberate." Daniel frowned, confusion flashing across his face. "Deliberate? What do you mean?" Collins stepped in, his voice lower. "We're saying their DNA shows traces of hybridization. These aren't just German shepherds. There's something else woven into them. Something wild," Sarah's breath caught. "Hybrid with what?" Rivera opened the folder, sliding photographs across the table, images of genetic sequences compared side by side. The closest matches point to wolves, but even then, there are anomalies we can't explain. These puppies may be part dog, part wolf, and part something entirely unknown. The words sank like a stone in the pit of Sarah's stomach. She shook her head in disbelief. "That's not possible. Bella has never been near another animal. She's never left our yard without us." Collins exchanged a troubled glance with Rivera. "That's why this is so alarming. This shouldn't be possible." And yet, as if to punctuate his words, one of the pups let out that same piercing cry, sharper and more haunting than before. Bella immediately lowered her head over the litter, her body tense, her eyes burning with defiance, as if daring anyone to question her babies again. Rivera leaned back, her expression solemn. "Whatever they are, this litter is unique, rare, and the world will want to know about them." For Sarah and Daniel, the miracle had just transformed into something far more complicated and far more dangerous. Sarah sat in the clinic chair, her hands trembling as she tried to process the revelation. Hybrid, unknown, words that felt too heavy to carry. She looked down at the basket of squirming pups, their tiny bodies pressing against one another, innocent and unaware of the storm surrounding them. To her, they weren't anomalies or mysteries, they were Bella's babies. Tears welled in her eyes as she whispered, "They're ours, Daniel. No matter what anyone says, they're still ours." Daniel wrapped an arm around her shoulders, but his own face was pale with worry. "I know," he said softly. "But if the world finds out, they'll see them as experiments, not lives. They'll want to take them away." His words cracked with fear. Bella, lying near Sarah's feet, lifted her head at the sound of her owner's trembling voice. Her dark eyes glistened with unwavering loyalty, and she nudged Sarah's leg gently as if offering reassurance. Sarah bent down, running her fingers through the dog's fur, drawing strength from her silent guardian. The couple's hearts ached with the weight of an impossible choice. Should they hide the puppies, protecting them from curious eyes? Or should they trust the experts, risking the possibility that their beloved Bella's litter might be taken from them? Sarah pressed a kiss against the head of one pup that wriggled in her hands. Its unusual markings shimmered faintly in the light, but all she saw was beauty. "They're a part of Bella," she whispered, her voice steadier now. "And if she can love them without fear, so can we." Daniel's eyes softened, though worry still lingered. "Then we fight for them, whatever it takes." In that quiet moment, amidst heartbreak and fear, hope began to bloom again. Love, they realized, was stronger than any mystery. The following days were a blur of sleepless nights. Sarah hovered constantly over Bella and her extraordinary litter, counting each pup again and again, her heart tightening at every sound they made. At first, they all seemed strong, too strong even, but soon cracks began to appear in the miracle. One morning, Sarah noticed a small pup lying apart from the rest, its tiny chest rising unevenly. She scooped it up gently, panic rushing through her veins. "Daniel," she called, her voice trembling. "Something's wrong." The little creature whimpered faintly, its unusual markings duller than before. Bella nudged it frantically, whining as though urging her baby to fight. Sarah's tears blurred her vision. These weren't just mysterious puppies anymore. They were fragile lives hanging in the balance. They rushed the pup to Dr. Collins, Bella padding close behind, refusing to be left behind. The vet worked quickly, his brows furrowed as he listened to the tiny heartbeat. "It's weak," he muttered. "Much weaker than the others." Sarah clutched Daniel's hand, her nails digging into his skin. "You have to save it," she begged. "Please don't let it die." Collins shook his head gently. "We'll do everything we can, but sometimes nature intervenes." His words trailed off, but his eyes betrayed the same fear they all felt. These puppies weren't bound by ordinary rules. For hours, they waited, Bella lying anxiously beside the examination table, her head pressed close to her pup. She refused to eat, refused to move, her loyalty unbreakable. Finally, the tiny chest steadied, the faint cry grew stronger. Relief washed over the room like a wave, but the scare left its mark. If one puppy could falter so suddenly, what about the others? Sarah's joy had now transformed into constant dread. She hovered over them with a mother's vigilance, fearing each new day might bring another collapse. Yet amid the struggle, she also saw resilience. The puppies were fighters, each one clawing toward life, defying odds stacked against them. And as Bella's unwavering devotion wrapped around her unusual brood, Sarah realized that no matter their mystery, they were bound together by something undeniable: love and survival. The night was quiet, the kind of silence that made every small sound echo louder. Sarah lay awake on the couch, her eyes fixed on Bella and the puppies. Despite her exhaustion, she couldn't bring herself to sleep. Each rise and fall of those tiny chests mattered too much. Suddenly, a sharp cry pierced the stillness. One of the pups had rolled onto its back, its limbs flailing helplessly. Before Sarah could move, Bella sprang forward. With gentle precision, she nudged the pup upright, licking it until its squeals softened into soft whimpers. Sarah exhaled shakily, her heart pounding. It wasn't just instinct, it was as if Bella knew exactly what each puppy needed, as though she could sense things beyond human understanding. The following day, the family took the pups outside for their first taste of fresh air. A gentle breeze rustled the grass and the sunlight danced across their unusual markings. Neighbors watched from a distance, curiosity burning in their eyes, but Sarah ignored them. Her focus was on Bella, who circled the litter like a guardian angel. When one of the bolder pups tried to wander too far, Bella intercepted it instantly, guiding it back with a firm nudge. When another whimpered in discomfort, she licked it soothingly until it calmed. Sarah's chest swelled with pride and awe. Daniel whispered beside her, "She's doing more than protecting them. She's teaching them." Dr. Collins, who had come to observe quietly, nodded in agreement. "It's remarkable. She seems to anticipate their needs before they even show them. This level of maternal response. It's extraordinary." For Sarah, the realization was profound. If the puppies were different, then Bella was the bridge between their mystery and the world that feared them. Her love and loyalty were proof that no matter what secrets the litter carried, they were still hers. Sarah knelt beside Bella, wrapping her arms around the dog's neck. "You're showing me how to be brave," she whispered through tears. Bella licked her cheek in return, her dark eyes steady, unwavering. In that moment, Sarah understood. If Bella could embrace the unknown with love, so could she. Weeks passed, and the puppies grew at a staggering pace. Their eyes opened sooner than expected, their teeth emerging earlier, their movements sharper and stronger than any normal litter Sarah had ever seen. With each passing day, the mystery deepened, and so did the questions. Finally, Dr. Rivera and Dr. Collins called the family back to the clinic. Sarah and Daniel arrived with Bella and her brood, their hearts pounding with anticipation and dread. The room was tense as Rivera laid out the final report. "These puppies," she began, "are indeed hybrids. The DNA confirms traces of wolf ancestry, which explains their strength, stamina, and rapid development. But," she paused, her expression grave, "there are markers in their genes that don't align with either dogs or wolves. Something rare, something unrecorded is present." Sarah's breath hitched. "Then what are they?" Collins leaned forward, his tone gentler. "They are unique, Sarah, not monsters, not experiments, just rare creations of nature. They're healthy, thriving, and extraordinary. This litter may never be seen again in our lifetime." Daniel let out a shaky breath, relief mingling with awe. "So they're not dangerous?" Rivera shook her head. "Not if raised with love and care. Their instincts may be sharper, their abilities stronger, but at their core they are still Bella's puppies." Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she clutched one of the pups to her chest. I don't care what science calls them. They're family. Bella stood proudly, her eyes glowing as if she understood every word. Around her, the puppies yipped and stumbled across the floor, their tiny paws thudding with surprising strength. The weight that had pressed on Sarah's chest for weeks finally lifted. The fear, the confusion, it all gave way to wonder. These puppies weren't a curse or a danger. They were a miracle, Rivera smiled softly. Protect them. Nurture them. And one day the world may come to understand the gift you've been given. For Sarah and Daniel, the truth didn't matter nearly as much as the bond they shared with Bella and her extraordinary litter. What began as fear ended as gratitude. For life, for love, and for a miracle no science could fully explain. Life slowly returned to a new kind of normal in Sarah and Daniel's home. The puppies thrived, growing faster than anyone expected. Their unique markings became more pronounced, their playful antics filling the house with laughter. Sarah often found herself watching them with awe, torn between wonder and gratitude. What had once been fear now felt like a blessing. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Daniel sat in the backyard, the pups tumbling across the grass. Look at them, he said softly. Stronger every day. It's like they were meant for something more. Sarah smiled, though her heart stirred at his words. She couldn't deny it, these weren't ordinary dogs. Each pup carried something rare, something extraordinary. And though science had given them an explanation deep down, Sarah believed there was still a mystery no test could fully uncover. That night, as she tucked the pups into their blanket nest, something happened that made her freeze. One of the larger pups raised its head and let out a sound. Not a bark, not a whimper, but a haunting howl that sent shivers through the room. The others joined in, their voices blending into a chilling yet beautiful harmony. For a moment it felt as though the wild itself had entered their home. Bella stood tall, her chest rising proudly as she added her voice to theirs. The sound was powerful, primal, yet strangely comforting. Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she whispered, "They're not just different, they're chosen." Daniel placed an arm around her, his voice steady. "Then it's our job to protect them no matter what." The family stood together that night, their hearts beating in rhythm with the haunting chorus. They didn't have all the answers, and maybe they never would. But they knew one thing with certainty. Bella and her miraculous 15 puppies had changed their lives forever. And as for the world? Well, that part of the story was only just beginning. If you were amazed by this incredible journey, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you never miss another unbelievable story. And tell us in the comments, what do you think these extraordinary puppies were meant for?